I know at this point, Memphis Grizzlies fans, the organization, you probably think you can't catch a break. GG Jackson injures his foot. Now he needs surgery. But I'm going to tell you right now, this isn't the end of the world for the Grizzlies, and it's not the end for GG Jackson. Let's talk about it here next on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal here in Memphis, Tennessee. Shout out to everyone. Hope everyone enjoyed, the extended, weekend, out there. Shout out to the Memphis people. 901 Day was just recently in Memphis. I enjoyed myself on 901 Day. I got down there on Beale Street and all that good stuff. But now we're back on Locked On Grizzlies, and we got a lot of things to talk about in this show. But we got to start with GG Jackson. But before we get to that, just remember that this show is brought to you by Gametime. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. And remember, on Gametime, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Gametime today. And what time is it? Yeah, that's right. It's game time. Speaking of Gametime, the Grizzlies have Gametime in about a month, and they're going to be without GG Jackson. GG Jackson injured his foot, while in the Dallas area, and I'll read the Memphis Grizzlies press release. As they said in the statement here, it said, while playing basketball outside of Dallas on August 27th after attempting a contested layup, GG Jackson experienced an unstable landing on his right foot. And basically, subsequent imaging revealed pretty much a broken bone in his right foot, which will require surgery to repair. It's a tough break for GG Jackson. It's a tough break for Memphis. This is not something that you wanted to see. And I know there's that part of the fan base like, here we go again. Here come the injuries and all of that. So let's start with the news of this. It happened in the Dallas area. If you've been keeping up with our coverage here on Locked On Grizzlies, or just watching the Grizzlies players on the socials and things, that Dallas area has been a popular workout spot. I know Jaren Jackson Jr. went down there to work out with Desmond Bane. John Morant, has been in the Dallas area, working out at SMU, Southern Methodist, using the facilities out there. Zach Edey recently went out there as well. Desmond Bane, told me not too long ago, around the time, end of August, that the Grizzlies players plan to get together and have some, informal workouts. So I'm not sure if that's exactly where GG Jackson was in this case, but I do know that area has been a popular workout spot for Grizzlies players. GG lands on his foot wrong, hurts his foot, and needs surgery. So I'll start here, with the sidelining him thing, because this is one reason why I do not think it's the end of the world for the Grizzlies or GG Jackson. For one, we won't know pretty much the full scope of when GG Jackson potentially should be back until surgery is done. He's expected to get surgery on Wednesday, and then everything goes according to plan in surgery. There could be a more firm timeline on how long this thing will take GG Jackson to heal. But if you just want to use some history into the situation, because everyone heals differently, but foot injuries, particularly the one, I think it's called the fifth metatarsal in his right foot, the one that GG Jackson suffered, is kind of, I don't want to say a popular injury, in the right foot, but I've talked to doctors in the past before, and they say when players get foot injuries, it's usually one or two things, and this is one of those two things. And I did a little research as well, and it's actually an injury that a former Grizzlies player had, and the timelines from when that player suffered the injury to when GG Jackson suffered the injury wasn't too much different. So I want to give a little more clarity on that situation. Shout out to the OG Grizzlies fans out there, because you'll remember this, maybe potentially you might remember, you might remember, you might not. But Ben McLemore, remember when he played for the Grizzlies that one year when Ben McLemore got hurt before his first season with the Grizzlies? He suffered a non-displaced fracture of the fifth metatarsal in his right foot. The fifth metatarsal. This is the same injury that Gigi Jackson has been diagnosed with. But he had a non-displaced fracture in this foot and was given a timeline of 3 months to return, at that time. So Ben McLemore was given 3 months, and he suffered the injury. It was early August. Now, we saw with Gigi Jackson, it was late August. August 27th, I believe, was the exact date. So you're talking about 3 weeks apart, roughly in between those timelines. But early August for Ben McLemore, and he returned on November 11th, which was still pretty early in the Grizzlies season that year. He returned November 11th. So if you're into the rough timeline prediction, you just can't wait. Because we'll get more clarity once Gigi Jackson has surgery. No, this is not something that's going to keep him out for the season. Yes, this is something that several NBA players in the past have had surgery and came back and performed at high levels from. So I don't think there should be any long-term concerns. We know if you follow the Grizzlies organization closely, they're going to play it slow when Gigi Jackson gets back. And that's kind of what I want to get to now, because the next question is, how does this alter things for Gigi Jackson this season, right? Like, some of you had higher than high expectations for Gigi. A lot of people say, Damichael, I think Gigi Jackson should be in the starting lineup. And I say, I don't know about all that. But there was always the question of Gigi Jackson being that impact scorer. Remember, the Grizzlies haven't had a guy like Gigi Jackson who could create his shot and, a big, long 6'9" forward, create his own shot off the bench and give you that instant offense in a long time. And Gigi Jackson was going to provide that on a team that had starters like John Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr., who are all capable of averaging over 20 points per game. So you're talking about 3 starters that can give you 20 plus a guy off the bench who's capable of doing it any night as well because he brings you instant offense. That's what Gigi was supposed to bring to this team. Now, if you follow, shout out to the everydayers, because if you follow Locked On Grizzlies, 2 things that I've talked about is, one, the potential for there not being a certainty that Gigi Jackson was going to be in the rotation. And another thing was the fact that Gigi Jackson needed to be on the floor more with John Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr. to kind of learn how to play off of those guys. That was one of the things I wanted to see in preseason camp the most. That was one of the things I wanted to see kind of just unfold throughout the early parts of the season. Doesn't look like we'll get that, at least going on. So a couple developmental things will probably take a little bit longer. The Grizzlies, I think, by the time Gigi Jackson gets back, it probably was going to be sometime in December. It could be even November. We'll see, a more clear, firm timeline after surgery and whatnot. But whenever it is that Gigi Jackson is to come back, I think the idea that he's going to be slowly worked in will be what happens. But the whole thing about, him kind of settling in alongside of Job, Dez, and Jaren, those dudes will probably be in full in-season mode, and they're going to be pretty much at their speeds. There won't be any training wheels for them. So I think, honestly, if we're just being realistic, there'll probably be some ups and downs this season simply because he won't get, preseason training camp and things like that with those guys. But at the end of the day, Gigi Jackson is too talented. I still think he's going to be a productive player for the Grizzlies this season. Whenever he comes back, they're going to slowly incorporate him in. And, that instant offense ability that he has is going to help the bench because they're going to need it. Like, you need scores like Gigi Jackson because, he's a rare talent, 6'9", the way he moves. It's not a lot of guys in the league who are just capable of that. So I think this does not alter too much when I think about the long-term plans for him. It was a little bit different for guys like Zaire. Like, if you remember, Zaire Williams was coming into, last season, and he was dealing with the injuries and the year before that, where he didn't go to summer league because of the load management stuff. It was a different situation. But Gigi Jackson, the scoring profile, the way he played in summer league, all of it was encouraging enough to me where I believe that this is not going to deter anything from an overall progression standpoint this season. If he makes his debut in November, December, January, February, whatever it is, I think he will have. I mean, he doesn't need 50 games. He'll have enough time. He'll get incorporated into the Grizzlies, with the bench, which is going to still allow him to play his game. And I think he'll be fine. Not overly worried about what this means for GG long term. Not overly worried about what this means for the Grizzlies long term. So, want to just, I know I'm usually the one that's always saying everybody relax a little bit. But in this case, I do think that is the thing. And there have been a couple of Grizzlies fans who said things like, Damichael, you know our trauma. You witnessed last season. You've seen some of the, there have been other cases in the past where injuries have kind of derailed the Grizzlies season before they even got off to a good start. And, this could be, I mean, this could be, like that first sign where people see G get hurt and they say, oh, it triggers that alarm. Here we go again. But again, the Grizzlies still have a lot of talented players. And we're going to talk about that here next on Locked On Grizzlies. What's next for the Grizzlies? But before we get to that, before we talk about what's next for the Grizzlies, we got to talk about some steps that you should make next in your life. And that's with BetterHelp, because this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Look, kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose, that curiosity. Sometimes we lose that fire, and sometimes we use that passion. If you're one of those people, you might want to go check out BetterHelp, because it's simple. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, BetterHelp is the place you should give a try. Number one, it's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. BetterHelp is going to make sure that it fits inside of your schedule. And all you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. I know some people say, I'm not really feeling this therapist. At BetterHelp, no problem. You can be able to switch therapists, and there will be no additional charge. You remember that curiosity we were just talking about? Go rediscover that now with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies, we just talked about GG Jackson and what's next for him. Now we got to talk about what's next for the Grizzlies, so stay tuned for that here on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. Pretty much going to be a GG Jackson themed episode on today. In the first segment, we just talked about the injury news. GG Jackson suffering a right foot injury. Going to sideline him for a while. He still has a month. Now, the Grizzlies don't get to training camp until, October. So we still pretty much got a month for GG Jackson to kind of heal up. He'll have surgery, as I said earlier, in a couple days on Wednesday. So we'll see, how everything comes of that and everything. And that'll be where we move on forward and continue to talk about what's next for GG Jackson. But as for what's next for the Grizzlies, we can kind of answer some of those questions right now, and some of that actually in a definitive fashion, because here's the thing, and this is the reality. I've been talking about this for months. The starting lineup is probably going to be, pretty self-explanatory. We know four of the guys are probably going to be Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, Jaren Jackson Jr. Very likely that Zach Edey joins them in that group as well. If that's your starting five, like, just bear with me, because I know some people say, Vince Williams, but let's just say that's your starting five. Cool. Vince Williams is going to play. He is going to play. That's one. Luke Kennard is going to play. That's two. Brandon Clark, he's going to play. That's three. The Grizzlies love to play 9 guys. Sometimes Taylor Jenkins will go to 10. But if you follow the Grizzlies in their rotation, even when he plays 10, that 10th guy is not a full rotation member. It's like that 10th guy may play more minutes in the first half than he typically does in the second half. But that 9th spot, I kept saying it's going to be Santi or Gigi. It's very unlikely that it could be both of those guys in that spot. It's a numbers game, because you're not taking Vince Williams out of the equation. I don't think you're taking Luke Kennard out of the equation. And Brandon Clark, you're definitely not taking him out of the equation. So with those 8 spots kind of solidified, Santi and Gigi was going to be a conversation. And Santi should play well this season. Like how well, he has weaknesses. He has very clear weaknesses, clearly with strength. I think when we saw him in Spain, we're playing for the Spanish national basketball team, what we noticed is, him having the ball in his hands a little bit more, and it's a different type of game over there. But Santi Aldama also has a lot of trust from Taylor Jenkins, which is clearly very important, especially when you talk about the Grizzlies trying to get back to getting back to those winning basketball habits as this team, tries to compete for Western Conference championship this season in a loaded. You talked about how loaded the Western Conference is. So with all that being said, I'm here to say this. The Gigi Jackson injury does not change the trajectory for this team. Don't try to build that excuse in right now. You Grizzlies fans, don't go out here telling people, oh, we lost Gigi Jackson. We're cooked. Oh, don't. No. This team's goals are clearly in front of them. Everything that they want to accomplish is still very reachable. It's very attainable. And with Gigi Jackson, again, you start the season probably without him. But he'll be able to get back into the fold. And more than anything, most importantly, if he has a healthy season, after he comes back to that, you will have him for a potential playoff run, which I think those guys who are shot creators, we see it all the time. I think Gigi, when he develops, it might not be this year, might be speaking ahead a little bit, but when he develops a little bit more, he's going to be a playoff player because he's going to be a guy you can give the ball and say, hey, all those different types of defenses you're running is not going to stop me from just getting a bucket. So with all that being said, I don't think this changes the trajectory. The starting lineup won't change based on the Gigi Jackson injury. Gigi Jackson was not going to start for the Grizzlies this year. Right? I know some people like that idea. Wasn't going to happen, at least, while everyone was healthy. So you factor that in. You factor in the fact that those guys, Luke Kennard, Vince Williams, Brandon Clark, are going to come off the bench. You factor in the fact that what about the point guard spot? Because that might be that's probably going to be your 10th guy, whether it's Derrick Rose, whether it's Scottie Pippen Jr. Helping out, while he's on the 2-way deal. You're going to have a lot of guys factoring into this situation with the Grizzlies this season. So I don't think that the Gigi Jackson injury right now changes the trajectory. If you had the Grizzlies finishing as the number 2 seed this season, don't change that. If you had them being the top team in the Western Conference, don't change that. If you had them 4th or 5th based on, the depth and things like that, it's still there. Even minus Gigi Jackson, you still have possibly 2 to 3 guys who can average double figures off the bench. Brandon Clark has pretty much done it his entire career. He's almost a shoo-in for double figures. Then you got Luke Kennard. He's very much instant offense himself, not from the shot creating standpoint, but you leave him open and he makes that one. It ain't too many hands being up in his face that's going to stop him from keeping those 3-point shots falling. So you still have what I feel like is a very good NBA bench. Santi Aldama, this kind of eliminates the question, in my opinion, the Gigi or Santi thing that I kind of was talking about. Now that's kind of eliminated, at least for the time being. And then there's a bigger light being put on Santi Aldama because this is the year you need to see more from Santi Aldama. But there are a couple other guys who have to step up as well. And I want to talk about those guys here in this segment as well. But before we get to that, thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen of the day. Your second listen, make sure you go enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There is no offseason in the NBA and Locked On NBA that provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA. Available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now back to the conversation on what's next for the Grizzlies here. And a name that I haven't said yet is Jake LaRavia. And he is the player who probably stands to, I guess for lack of better words, be able to take advantage of this increased opportunity the most. For one, he is the guy who can switch positions like Gigi. He can play the 3 and the 4 like the Grizzlies like to play with Gigi Jackson. So if Taylor Jenkins had it, intentions that, we're not trying to just put Gigi Jackson at the 4, with Santi and Jaren and, with minutes down there, or we're not trying to just glue him to the 3. The versatility is also there in Jake LaRavia. Jake LaRavia played really well in Summer League. I mean, you could make the argument, like, if he would have played more, he probably would have been on the all-Summer League team, right along with Scottie Pippen Jr. and Gigi Jackson. This is also another guy who this is a huge year for him from a developmental standpoint. He looks more confident on the floor, and I'm telling you, every time I talk to him, you can feel the confidence. You hear Jake LaRavia talk, confidence is not an issue, with that guy. So with all that being said, he's the player who I think stands to benefit the most. All those other names that I mentioned, Santi, Brandon Clark, Vince Williams, I don't think the Gigi Jackson injury pretty much changes the trajectory on this year's Grizzlies team for them. But one Jake LaRavia will have more opportunity to show off his game, and it's an important opportunity. He's former first-round pick. We see it in flashes. I mean, I always go back to those first 4 or 5 games of Jake LaRavia's NBA career where he was knocking down three-pointers. I think he was the top 3-point shooting rookie at that time. He got sick. I think the team was going out to Sacramento. And he opened up over the course of the year finally just about what that really did for him. And it was hard for him to kind of just regain his footing after that. All that's just to say, I know there are some people, shout out to my guy Parker Fleming. He is one who always reminds you that Jake LaRavia could be in position to take that step. And we'll see if that happens because he's going to get the opportunity. Like, I felt like last year David Roddy got a great opportunity, didn't really take advantage of it as much. Grizzlies moved on from him. This is Jake LaRavia's opportunity. Now, Gigi Jackson goes down. You are a guy who can play the 3 and the 4 like him. Jake LaRavia has shown really good signs of rebounding. You go watch him in Summer League, he rebounded the ball at a high level. If you do that, Taylor Jenkins is going to put you on the floor. The way he also, defended in Summer League. You do that, Taylor Jenkins is going to put you on the floor. It's not even about all the scoring. Like, the scoring is, if he's scoring like that, he's definitely going to be on the floor. But it's those little things that we saw Jake LaRavia do in Summer League. Now it has to translate over to the Grizzlies season. We're going to see if that happens. And if it does happen, you can bet Jake LaRavia is going to be in that conversation too in terms of who's going to crack that rotation for the Memphis Grizzlies. Coming up on Locked On Grizzlies, we got to talk about Jaren Jackson Jr. He had an interesting exchange with Ja Morant that I think a lot of Grizzlies fans would like to know about. We're going to talk about that here next on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we talk to that, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is also brought to you by Gametime. Look, Gametime has a new feature out there, and it's called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Like, it already was easy through Gametime, but now it's even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste any time searching through thousands of tickets. Make sure you go take advantage of that opportunity right now over at Gametime. Because remember, here's the thing that makes Gametime stand out. Because not only do you save money on that, but you're saving money on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, wherever you want to go. And you get all-in pricing. All-in pricing. So make sure that you get that. The seat views, lowest price guarantee, Gametime ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Because what time is it? Gametime. Coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies. It ain't game time yet for the Memphis Grizzlies. It ain't game time yet for Jaren Jackson Jr., but could it be game time for him for many more years in Memphis? Let's talk about that here next on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal here in Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you guys for tuning in with us on Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you continue to tune in with us each and everywhere you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen, wherever you watch, like YouTube. Locked On Grizzlies is there, and me and Joe Mullinax, my co-host, will have you covered on everything leading up to the next month. I'll be out there in Nashville. Remember, the Grizzlies will be in Nashville in October. I'm going to be out there, so we're going to have everything covered here on Locked On Grizzlies, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But that's the short-term stuff. Let's start talking long-term a little bit, because if you're watching on YouTube, you see on our today's show in the little third bullet point, we have Jaren in Memphis long-term with a question mark. And if you're listening, you're like, of course Jaren's going to be in here long-term. Damichael, what are you talking about? Well, I mean, I've never thought otherwise, but let's just put it like this. I'm just gonna call it straight. There have been several times in NBA history where guys get to that contract, which is what Jaren is getting to now, his third contract. He's closing in on that. And you pretty much play out 2 contracts with a team. And there's this sense of loyalty and, kind of easing. It's like, oh, yeah, he's here to stay. But curveballs happen. And we've seen them. Where Paul George was in Indy. And I know that ended up, being, I think he got traded. Yeah, he got traded or whatnot. But it was very much a move that he wanted to happen, leaving the Indiana Pacers. But that was one example. Remember LeBron James, Memphis first, he was the hometown kid, playing, just down the street from Akron, Ohio in Cleveland. And then he leaves and says he's taking his talents to Miami. So that's just 2 examples off the top of my head, but there are several more examples over the course of the NBA where guys play out 2 contracts, and then on that third contract, they move on. And Jaren will eventually have that option, in the next couple years, but it doesn't sound like he's going anywhere. And I say that because there was an exchange recently on social media between Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja Morant. And it was on 901 Day. Shout out to 901 Day. Everyone was making their 901 Day posts and whatnot. And Jaren took to X and he made a post and he said, been here since I was 18. And he posted an M emoji. Basically, been in Memphis since he was 18 years old, which is true. Jaren has pretty much, went from young adult to a man in Memphis. And Ja Morant commented on the post and said, better not go nowhere either. Tell him you better not leave. And Jaren responded back with a lock emoji, basically saying he's locked in. So let's start here. I don't think anyone really questioned the idea if Jaren's going to leave or if he's going to leave right now. Even if this season doesn't go overly well, I still think the idea is that Jaren is going to be in Memphis for a while. I mean, he's invested in the community. He just had a camp recently as well. Jaren loves Memphis. I know this. But the thing about it is, what about the financial part, the business part? We've talked about the fact that Jaren Jackson Jr., if he wins Defensive Player of the Year, if he is on the All-NBA team this upcoming season, he will qualify for a contract over $300 million. He will qualify for that. And pretty much, if you look around the NBA, guys who've met the requirements for those contracts have been getting them. Because the first thing I would say is there the possibility of, if Jaren's super locked in, right? At some point, we're going to have a conversation about the idea that would these guys take some type of hometown discount? Nothing huge, nothing crazy, but, Ja Morant will soon be extension eligible. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. That's a later conversation because I don't want everybody's brains going like, what? But anyways, we'll stick with Jaren. The point is the contracts are going to just constantly be flowing for the Grizzlies. And the fact that you have a core built in place, you have to build around them, but you have to take care of them too. You have to keep them happy. That's going to be important. Can the Grizzlies keep them happy? By the idea, because look, all things considered, maybe it didn't feel that way when Jaren first signed his contract or whatever, even though I saw a lot of people saying the Grizzlies got a bargain, but they did. And that was the discount. And now Desmond Bane is on a rookie max extension. John Morant is on a rookie max extension, while Jaren Jackson Jr. is on a de-escalating contract that was nowhere near his max potential number. So we'll see how that situation plays out. But at the end of the day, I think everyone should find confidence in the fact that, hey, look, it's very clear. Jaren loves Memphis. Memphis loves Jaren. And he's going to want to be here long term. So rest easy on that part as well. Thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies on today. Now, go check out the Locked On NBA podcast, where the season never ends, provide national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link to Locked On NBA in the description, so you don't need to go search for it. It's in the description of the show that you're watching right now. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with me today. Make sure you continue to tune in with us throughout the rest of this week. Again, we're going to have more updates on G.G. Jackson post-surgery, and we're going to have more. There needs to be more conversations had about some other players around this team, because this does not shift the overall landscape of the picture of where the Grizzlies could end up in the standings, in my opinion. But G.G. Jackson is a very talented player, so there is a domino effect that me and Joe Mullinax will continue to discuss after this recent G.G. Jackson injury. We'll talk about that in future episodes of Locked On Grizzlies. But remember, Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcast. And we'll see you next time on Locked On Grizzlies. Until then, I'm Damichael Cole. See you next time on Locked On Grizzlies.